Are we trading for Cole Ragans and Spencer Strider? And are we trading away Chris Bubic and Ranger Suarez? And a special prospect call-up notification on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Adney. As you can see if you're watching on YouTube, and if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And lastly, but what's most important to help put you over the top in your fantasy baseball league, join Matt and I on the Insider's Track, where you're going to get exclusive prospect call-up notifications and so much more than we offer here in these 30-minute episodes. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And all right, Matt, today's episode, we're doing trade for and away as always. We got big names like Cole Ragans and Strider, and we got some overachievers like Bubic and Suarez, as we mentioned at the top. But real quick little cliff note here. Another big prospect call-up notification. We've been getting these on the daily. It seems like at this point it's been a little bit of luxury. Quick talk about Jacob Mizorowski, starting pitching prospect of the Brewers. He's getting called up for Thursday's start against the Cardinals. He's been dominant this year in AAA through 12 starts. It's a 2.13 ERA with 4 wins, 63 innings, 80 strikeouts. Batters are hitting 175 against him, and he has a 109 whip during that time. He's big guy, 6'7", 200 pounds. He has that gigantic fastball, gets up over 100 miles an hour with it. Sits averages anywhere between 97 to 99. He's got good stuff, really working on the secondary stuff, good curveball. The control has been the problem in previous years, even though he's always got the big strikeout numbers, a good ERA. The whip has held him back in previous years, but he has looked to correct the problem this year. For me personally, anywhere you need a starting pitcher, I think Mizarowski should be grabbed just for the potential upside. He's already 25% owned on Yahoo. I'd grab him wherever you need a starting pitcher. Right now, he's actually only RP eligible on Yahoo. Should get that starting pitching eligibility soon, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, worst case, he's a SPARP in points leagues, so he's kind of like a cheat code. So I like it even more. I mean, Mizorowski is somebody that I don't know how long he's going to be up for. They might Logan Henderson him where, he's up for a couple, a start or two, and then essentially he's gone again. We'll see. This could very well be a showcase, but he's exciting. He's somebody that I'm going to add speculatively and kind of go from there. So great call out, Dom. And let's move on. Let's talk about Chris Bubic of the Kansas City Royals. So currently he is having an incredible year, a career year, in my opinion. Chris Bubic on the season, 75 innings pitched, 5 wins, 79 strikeouts, a 1.43 ERA with a 1.0 whip. Dude looks incredible. Do not get me wrong. Now you go back and you look at him, the age 27 guy who's had a career. He's been up since age 22, so 5 years. He's a career 4.10 ERA. Whereas now he's posting a 1.43. There's obviously some negative regression coming his way. And you're not going to buy into what he did in 2024, where he had that sub-3 ERA. It was only through 30 innings. Now was on a great pace, and even the FIP was kind of matching up. And along with even 2023, the FIP was much better than what you saw in 23. And that was posted on the stat line with 3.94 ERA. But again, that was through 16 innings. He also hasn't been a guy that's been healthy for a couple of years. So I don't know really how to stand with him, because I look at him and I go, do I really want to believe in the talent? And the answer is absolutely not. So I'm trading him. There's just not enough there for me to say, hey, this pace that he's on right now is sustainable. Can I go out and get bona fide stud? Can I trade this dude and get somebody that is buying into the hype and it sells super high? Absolutely. That's what I want to do. I think that he is definitely a guy that you could move and get actually a decent ransom for, in all honesty. I think that because of the age 27 and pitchers again age a little bit differently and have a longer time to progress, in my opinion, where I'll buy at age 27, buy a breakout most of the time. There's that kind of buy-in, but I think I'm ready to sell. I think I'm ready to capitalize on it because this might be the highest humanly possible value that he can have. And if everything goes as it's been going for the last 2 years, the likelihood of him maintaining this pace versus getting hurt or having some serious negative regression, the side is on the latter versus him continuing this pace. So sell him immediately.
Matt, great take there on Chris Bubic, Kansas City Royals starting pitcher. I agree. I'm going to take this route though, because I think he's the incorporation of the sweeper into his arsenal has helped. It didn't perform well last year, but this year has been a lot better on it, and I think that's helped him take this step forward. I just don't believe that he's going to pitch too many innings. Last year, he threw 30 innings. The year before, he threw 16. He threw 129 in 2022, and he's already at 75 this year. I just think as he gets closer to, 100, 125 innings, as a 27-year-old who's never thrown this many innings before, as he starts getting up there to his career high, I think we start to see him slow down a bit. I think even if it's to like a low threes ERA the rest of the way, it's still going to be a lot of negative regression, as Matt mentioned. I'd sell high. We're talking about some other great starting pitchers later that I would definitely incorporate Chris Bubic into a package for. Just sell high, capitalize while the ERA is under 2, the K per 9's over it, and he's just, blowing the league away right now. So I would definitely look to move him for a more valuable starting pitcher. If you can't get that, though, I'm not mad at hanging in there, but I just think this is an opportunity with a guy who's overperforming his, career numbers. Understand that he's made some changes, but just don't think he's this dominant, top 10 pitcher in all of baseball kind of guy. So let's move on, though. Let's move on. Let's get a bat in here. Let's talk about a little Carlos Correa. We did Buxton last week, and his teammate Correa has been, just as hot as of late. Numbers on the year aren't really blowing you away, but like I said, he's been hot of late. On the season, it's 54 games, 196 at bats, 24 runs, 11 doubles, 5 homers, 19 RBIs, and he's hitting 245. I like I said, you capitalize while a guy like this is hot. You get him off your team before he gets hurt. The other shoe falls off. Him and Buxton, man, like I said, I want to be as far away from them as I can. Correa himself went 2 for 5 on June 8th. He in his today he's 1 for 2 already with a run. He's hasn't really been stealing bags, hasn't done that in years though. Had a home run on May 30th and May 26th, went 3 for 4 on May 27th, another home run on May 23rd. So he's been hot of late. He's just somebody I'm looking to get rid of. Just get him off your team in those deeper leagues. Try and capitalize, move him away while the name is still has some value, to be honest.
For sure. I mean, quite honestly, you're really just gonna have to find a guy that likes Correa or is in need of a shortstop. He's more of like a deep league kind of trade away kind of guy. Whereas, like I think in like the shower leagues, anywhere from like 8 to 12, like you're really not going to get much for him. He's more of like a piece of the trade, not a centerfold. Whereas in like the 15-man leagues or the AL only, I believe is what it is. NL, yeah, AL. I think that my guys, that's where the value really comes in. Other than that, it's really just one of those things where, you're pretty much just going to ride the wave on him in those shower leagues if you have him added. So, before we move on and we talk about 2 more pitchers that we actually think you could probably capitalize on their value, cough, Merrill Kelly and Regis Suarez, and guys that I think, likelihood for them to keep this up or get hurt first is more on that side. We'll talk about that coming up after this. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track, which I do. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, so you can start managing money, stop managing money, and start building wealth. When I first started using Monarch Money, I realized how much I spent on food delivery, which it really doesn't change. But, now I know why I have no money instead of, where did it all go? managing my money with my wife is a little bit smoother, and you can, share and track your accounts and set goals together and stay on the same page without all the stress and fighting over, do you really need to get that off Amazon? We really don't have the money, which, I have that problem. So, hey, babe, look, we don't have it. You spent it all last week on Amazon. So, use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. And all right, look, you want a little bit more than what we offer on this 30-minute podcast? Check us out on the Insider Track. Look, there's a million ways that you can get in on to get more involved with this podcast, but quite honestly, getting in on the Insider Track is the best way. We provide, waiver wire rankings. We provide key stats coming from each episode. We can answer questions for you. We usually get an answer in about 24 hours. Anything you could possibly think of, plus the prospect call-ups that, we all are on the edge of our seats for who could impact our team the most. These are all things you want to get in on, so join the links in the description below. So let's get back into it, and let's talk about Merrill Kelly. I mentioned right before the break, the starting pitcher for those Arizona Diamondbacks. Look, he's 36 years old. He's having a great year. Do not get me wrong. 82 innings pitched, 79 strikeouts, a 3.18 ERA, and a 0.98 whip. Like, he really is going out there and killing it. Like, last couple starts have been good. Some big blow-up games, but, I'll take that in strides with him. But the thing is, where do I stand on him for the rest of the season? And that's the biggest question. Is he worth moving, or is he worth holding on to? And the question is, you can move on from him, especially since I think the value is at an all-time high. Look, in most leagues, in standard 5x5s, or even, points leagues where, pitching is more of a kind of like a hard to come by kind of type deal, and the waiver wire is probably completely scrapped. And you got Merrill Kelly for pretty much free 99, and it's time to capitalize and fill some holes on that team. Merrill Kelly's the perfect person to move on from. So I think that it's not sustainable, and I think this is the time to move. He's probably going to finish with more closer to a high threes, like a 3.89 or a 4 ERA. I mean, right now his expected ERA is a 4.01. His expected batting average against him is a 2.60. His fastball velocity is typical, 92 miles an hour, but he's giving up hard contact at 91 miles an hour. And, it's just not great. He's allowing guys near the barrel on him nearly 10% of the time, giving up hard contact 47% of the time. But he does counterbalance that with ground balls and things like that, not walking guys and creating strikeouts. It's just the mixture of those key stuff, plus the fact that he just hasn't been that guy in a few years, and the age kind of all factor into, hey, I think we're going to see more of a last year than a, better, this kind of near all-star-ish performance that we're seeing out on the field week in and week out. So I'm moving on from Kelly, and I'm going to capitalize on this high value now instead of, being left holding the hot potato at the end.
Matt, that was actually a perfect breakdown on Merrill Kelly. At 36 years old, I know the guy's been good before in the past. I'm just not banking on the 36-year-old having a career year and staking, my fantasy team on it. Like you said, Matt, it's a guy who you probably either took really late or got off your waiver wire, and I'd rather get myself an established player, rather than bank on the 36-year-old starting pitcher once again. But let's keep things pushing because, Matt, great job there on Merrill Kelly. Ranger Suarez of those Philadelphia Phillies, right? Just another guy. He's been around a while. We kind of know who he is. Having a great start, which Ranger Suarez has done before. He's done the fool you before with us in the beginning of the season, and wound up having a bad second half. So this year, 7 starts for Ranger Suarez, 2.70 ERA, 43 innings, 38 strikeouts, and a 1.13 WHIP. We know the whip's going to come up. He's never been a good whip guy. Career 1.27 whip. The K per 9, is under, like it's usually been. So we're not really worried about that. And he's a career 3.38 ERA guy, which is really good. I still think the ERA could be manageable, but I'm just not, once again, I know it's going to come up. Even last year was a 3.46. The year before that was a 4.18. So I think he's closer to a mid to high a mid to high threes ERA kind of guy rather than, the low twos where he sits now. So you just capitalize on value. Hey, he was an all-star last year. You talk up, hey, he's building on it. He's 29 years old. He's still not young enough. I'm not a big Ranger Suarez guy. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And listen, this Phillies team has another young bull ready to come up. So any mishap anywhere, even an injury, and Ranger Suarez could get Tom Brady by Andrew Painter. So I'm not a big Suarez guy. I'd rather trade him now and kind of see what I can get for him rather than hold on.
Well, the thing is, I think it's more of a likely that he gets moved at the trade deadline than anything else to make room for Painter.
Very well said.
But on top of that, I mean, look, he actually has made some improvements. So, like, we're not saying that by any means that Ranger Suarez is bad. It's just, the ERA may come up a little bit, and I'll talk about how it's a possible sustaining thing. But I think that it's more likely that Alberto Montes his way out of the season, where he just gets hurt for the umpteenth time, because that's what he does. He doesn't really stay healthy. He doesn't pitch a lot of innings. Like last year was the first time he made it to 150 innings in 2 seasons, where he did the last time he did in 22. And that was the first time he did it in his whole career from 2018 to present day. He's only pitched over 125 innings, over 150 innings 2 times his whole career. So it's kind of like, what are you going to bank on there too? And, if I could capitalize on a guy with a name that I think actually has a little bit of sex appeal, especially being that he's 29 years old, I think it's definitely time to capitalize on that. And, especially with the improvements he's made, because I actually think he's a good pitcher. I don't think this is smoke and mirrors, in all honesty, Dom. He has better movement on his fastball and off-speed pitches this year. The fastball velocity has never been, something that's like a knock your socks off kind of type deal. But he's truly suppressing the hard contact. The average exit velocity against him is 85.7 miles per hour. He's getting guys to chase 30% of the time. He's not really walking guys. And he's really suppressing, a lot of hard fly balls and things like that to help him suppress the home runs, because he creates ground balls 54% of the times. Now, that being said, too, he's not a guy that really just is living it up in the strikeout category. He'll be a little bit under a K per inning. And that's not something sexy. Whereas I think that we could trade this name value and get a guy that can help you in the Ks and still give you good ERA statistics. So Ranger Suarez is 100% a must trade. But I need to move on. And the guy I'd probably include, try to trade Suarez away for and something, because you're not going to just get Suarez for this dude straight up, is Cole Ragans, the starting pitcher of the Kansas City Royals. He's been battling injuries, and that's what makes him obtainable this year. It's not that Ragans honestly has been poo-poo. Yes, he's had some bad performances, but when you're battling injuries and the way that you are, you're going to have a 5.18 ERA. But the thing is, a guy that has been fantastic for the last 2 seasons and made some serious progression to become an elite all-star. I think that, this isn't his story. The talent just doesn't go away, and I'm going to buy in. Right. So this is the perfect time. You're going to be dealing with an owner that walked away with Cole Ragans as their number 1 starting pitcher. And you're going to say, okay, cool. Here's Suarez here's Suarez and his teammate Bubic, or however you say his name, and go here. Like, let me get that. And I think you might be also to get a little something else, because, those two together is actually a pretty nice package. And get Ragans in something, and you're doing very well at that point. So Ragans is a guy that I think is actually obtainable, whereas I think in a month or 2, that's not actually going to be the case. Because you look under the hood, too, his expected ERA is actually a 260. His expected batting average against him is 201. Fastball velocity is still great at 95.3 miles an hour. Still suppressing hard contact, because the average exit velocity is 88.4 miles an hour. Still getting guys to chase 30% of the time, whiffing guys 32% of the time, striking out guys 36% of the time. Could do a little bit better in the walks category, but that will come down, because he's been better at it. 114 last year, 116 the year before. And he's really suppressing hard contact overall. He's only doing that about 39% of the time. I would just like to see a little bit more in the ground ball category. But Cole Ragans is somebody that, you're seeing this under the hood. The talent is there clearly. So it's time to buy in before the explosion happens. It's that, going out of business sale on Cole Ragans, and we're going to get that discount, 70% off. Well, not that cheap, but you'll be able to get him for much cheaper than he would be. And before I hand it over to my boy Dom here to give your side of things, we got something on the other side of this, and then we're going to be talking some other players that you do need to buy low on coming up.
Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. And once again, you're going to do all of that on supplyhouse.com. And all right, guys, let's jump back in and talk some Cole Ragans. But Matt, honestly, we've been pretty in sync tonight with almost everybody. And I'm in on Cole Ragans. You know, we have him in the listener league. I'm an owner of Cole Ragans in other leagues. The bounce back is imminent. Even just look at the strikeout totals: 48 innings this year, 76 strikeouts, only 16 walks. I know the ERA looks crooked, but Matt, you talked about the underlying stuff. The FIP sits at a 2.39, which is fielding independent pitching. It's an ERA indicator. Kind of tells you where the ERA should be rather than where it is. And yeah, everything's pointing up for Cole Ragans right now. I'd pay up to 90 cents on the dollar for him just because he's that good. I think he's going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball in the second half as long as he can stay healthy. Honestly, same thing pretty much applies for this next guy. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. It's Spencer Strider, another guy coming off a big injury. Listen, he was dominating down in the minors, but, you know, it's taking a little bit of adjusting for him to, you know, figure things back out as he's gotten to the bigs. 5 starts so far this year, 5.40 ERA, 25 innings pitched, 24 strikeouts, a 1.28 whip. Honestly, I'll say this. He honestly might almost be the easier buy than Ragans at the moment just because the owners paid less for him, you know, coming off a bigger injury, and just there are a little bit more question marks surrounding Strider. So, you know, I think we will have to pay a little bit less than we do for Ragans. And I don't think I'm not going to say the ceiling isn't as high because I think the sky's the limit for Strider, but I just don't think maybe for this year that he could be as good as Ragans. But I think a big 2026 is in store for Strider. Might have a little bit of struggles here, but I still think he evens out, even if we see similar to what he did in 2023, right? That year it was a 3.86 ERA, 186 innings, 281 strikeouts, and a 109 whip. So if we see a monstrous strikeout total in the second half with a mid-threes ERA and a pretty solid whip, I think you make out if you pay up to 75 cents, 80 cents on the dollar for a guy like Strider. Listen, he might not – I'm not guaranteeing he's going to be great, but I think there's about an 80% chance that Strider – being pretty good for us in the second half. So I would like to invest if I can get a nice little deal on him.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of owners that are frustrated. They waited almost 2 months to get him on their team, and then he comes in, does this, and you know, patience level is a key with fantasy players. Everybody wants this instant gratification, and Spencer Strider isn't giving that. You know, we expected this guy that's been an all-star for so long to just come back and step right back into things, and that's not the case. So this is why he's obtainable. You know, earlier, you know, if you were trying to trade for him with the way he was coming up, you know, you weren't getting him for cheap. Now that he's obtainable again. I mean, I don't think you're going to get him for cheap. Like I think him and Ragans might be on the same page because people have that emotional attachment and things like that. But I mean, there is a conversation to be had. Even the underlying stats actually look really terrible for it. So this might even be a risk upon you. So I'm not going to pay much either. So like, you know, if I'm not going to overpay for him, I mean, every pitch by him is flat as can be. Expected ERA is right on par. It's at 5.20 ERA. You know, yes, the fastball velocity looks good and things like that, but everything else just kind of looks bad. So you just know that you can't pay up for him. You're not going to give up a big package. Like I would try and do what I was mentioning earlier with a Merrill Kelly and a Bubic, and I think that that's a fair price. Being that one, you didn't pay any draft capital, and two, we don't believe in them going into the rest of the year. So trying to acquire him that way, but it does come with a risk where I think you could probably get that same deal done for Cole Ragans. So just, you know, pick your battle and try to underpay if you can. Other than that, I would not. Let's move on. Let's talk about Jackson Chourio. So he's playing outfield for the Brewers, and he's having a year that I did not expect. I mean, he's dealing with the sophomore slumpies. He has 284 at bats, he has 39 runs, 18 doubles, a triple, 10 home runs, 37 ribs, 13 stolen bases, and batting an underwhelming 254. Last year, he batted at 275 in his rookie year, and it kind of gave us like positive feeling for this year to say, hey, like, he could be an OF1 going into the season. And unfortunately, I think he's getting a hit of the sophomore bug and getting slumpy. And that's not good. And you look at under the hood and you go, okay, the X what was at 302, the expected batting average at 259, the expected slug is at 415. The average exit velocity is really at 87.3 miles an hour. Which last year, just for reference, since this year he's hitting 87, the average exit velocity last year was 89.7, nearly 90 miles an hour. So a 2 mile per hour difference. He's not really barreling. He's barreling 7% of the time, not really creating hard contact, under 40%. Launch angles in the toilet, and things just aren't looking great. But here's the thing, right? I'm trying to obtain a guy that was an OF1. I think I'm going to bet on the talent. I'm going to bet on, the sophomore slump isn't going to last all year. But this also comes at a risk. This is the part of it, right? You play roulette, right? Now, you might bet on a number, you might bet red or black, but there's no guaranteed 50-50. It's more like, okay, you could lose your money too because it's going to land on 0 or double zero. And that could also be the case in that he could just have a sophomore slump for the whole season. But I think I'm going to bet on the talent and try and get that upside in that second half, because if you acquire him and you get him for cheaper than that, now you have him and he's more of a bench bat for you that then eventually could be a starting player. That could be a true boost to your rotation, to your, lineup where, okay, cool. Now that's a league winning trade. So I'm trading for Jackson Chourio. You're going to have to give up probably about 70% on the dollar, which is actually still a lot, but I think it's kind of worth it.
Yeah, Matt, I'm with you on Chourio. A top prospect, coming into last year, had a monster season, rookie season, and over 20 home runs. Just really showed out. Good batting average, like 275, 80 runs, 79 RBIs. Had a good year. Off to a slow start this year. I mean, look at Corbin Carroll last year. Was absolutely putrid at the beginning of the season. Finished the season like a house on fire. Was hitting home runs all over the place. I'll say this about Chourio, though. Over his last 18 games, he's hitting 299 with 3 homers, 5 steals, 12 RBIs, and 14 runs over that time, 4 doubles as well. He's heating back up. The buy low window is closing. It's closing as we speak. Literally today, he's hit a home run as we're recording here on Tuesday. He's 2 for 3 with a bomb. So that window is getting real short, real quick as we speak. So if you can buy on Jackson Chourio, I'd absolutely do it. You bank on a kid that's got the talent. He does power, speed, combo, plays for a pretty good team. Buy on Jackson Chourio. Let's move into this next guy. It's Teoscar Hernandez of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And honestly, he's just coming off an injury. A guy who was having a big first half before he got hurt. Plays for those Dodgers. I think, we just give him a little bit of time to get his footing back under him. He came back on May 19th. Since then, has been struggling. Like I said, Teoscar's been the same guy for the last few years. Plays for one of the best teams in baseball. Has a lot of RBIs already in 52 games played, 44 RBIs. That's a lot. That hitting fourth in that lineup, that'll do that to you. He's got power. He's got speed. Honestly, not really much else to say just because Teoscar's been around for a long time. You know who he is. And if you don't, like I said, a great power guy, a little bit of speed in there, is going to have a bunch of RBIs and should hit you for a plus batting average. So acquire where you can.
Yeah, I mean, and quite honestly, everything you said was well done. And on top of that, the underlying stats kind of match up with there's going to be a bounce back. The only thing that's kind of like lower, 2 miles an hour lower, is the average exit velocity, but that could change over a course of 2 weeks. So, let's just see. I think he's making good contact, and he's definitely a great trade target for sure. So well said, Dom. I'm going to move on to this last guy here, Wyatt Langford of the Texas Rangers, playing outfield for them. And he is somebody that has been just, in my opinion, disappointing overall. Second year in the bigs, I figured, okay, he would have figured things out by now on the stat sheet. And it isn't coming to full fruition, which is also the feeling of the owner right now. They spent up to get him. was probably an OF2, low end OF2, high end OF3, and is seeing him struggle and going through the struggle bus. And now it's time to trade for him, I feel. This is a guy that I think under the hood, things are going more right for him than bad. X-Wob is actually at a 354. His expected slug is at 477. Average exit velocity is at 91.5 miles per hour. He's barreling 13.5% of the time. Hard contact, he's literally hitting the ball hard 50% of the time. Not really chasing. He is striking out just a little bit, but he's counteracting it with walking, which is also good. So Wyatt Langford, I think, is slowly trying to just figure it out. And once he busts this slump, we could see a great second half. So I'm willing to take it. You could truly probably get him at a big discount right now because second year of underperforming and being underwhelming as a prospect and a top end prospect costing you so much. So try and acquire him for cheap because he's definitely somebody that I think will have a better second half coming because of what I'm seeing under the hood.
Yeah, Matt, I'm with you. This Texas Rangers team has kind of underperformed as a whole. I think there's brighter days ahead for the 23-year-old former top prospect. I'll say this. I don't know if he ever lives up to the batting average hype. He might wind up being more of between a 240, 260 kind of hitter with a good amount of power, a good amount of speed. And just this Rangers lineup, I expect it to be better going into the future. So I'm buying in a Langford where I can. But guys, that is all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And after you do that, go and check out our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB and check him out too. He does a great job of covering the league in a little bit of a different way than we do. But guys, until next time,
Peace.